The laborers' grand bargain betrayed, Union Republicans, Trump, and the injustice of state-based workers' rights for decades. American workers have cried out for equality and justice, a unified, federal workers' compensation system that ensures basic human rights for all injured workers. Yet their pleas have been met with deafening silence from leaders across the political spectrum. President Donald Trump, who positioned himself as a champion of the working class, and his Union Republican supporters must answer a critical question: are they for the workers or for the business interests that exploit them? This article appeals to the hearts and common sense of Union Republicans and all labor advocates, questioning why unions and leaders have abandoned the fight for equality and workers' rights. How can we regulate something as small as spark plugs at a federal level for consistency, yet injured workers' human rights remain a patchwork of inequality across states? A broken system of injustice, the current state-based workers' compensation system is riddled with glaring inequities that leave injured workers at the mercy of arbitrary state lines. Disparity in compensation: the value of an injured worker's arm varies drastically depending on the state. In one state, an arm may be worth $35,000, while in another, it's valued at $750,000. This stark contrast is not just inequity, it's an affront to human dignity and a blatant violation of the principle of equal treatment under the law. Gender-biased women often receive 10% less compensation than men for the same injuries. This systemic discrimination adds insult to injury, perpetuating inequality in a system already stacked against workers. Gender should never determine the value of a person's well-being or the compensation they receive for workplace injuries. Inconsistent protections: despite workers facing the same risks nationwide, protections and compensation vary wildly by state. This patchwork system benefits employers who exploit these discrepancies to minimize costs, while injured workers bear the burden. We regulate products and standards at the federal level to ensure consistency and safety. Why should workers' rights be any different? A legacy of inaction since President Richard Nixon's administration, workers have demanded reform of the fractured state-based workers' compensation system. Nixon's National Commission on State Workmen's Compensation Laws in 1972 highlighted the glaring inadequacies of the system and called for federal standards. Despite these findings, no administration, Republican or Democrat, has taken decisive action. From Barack Obama to Joe Biden, and now Donald Trump, each leader has failed to address this issue. While Trump claims to stand against the elite for the forgotten American worker, his silence on workers' federal human rights and the creation of a National Workers' Compensation Commission raises serious doubts about his commitment. Union Republicans, champions or betrayers? Union Republicans and organizations like the Teamsters, who dominate state labor councils, wield immense power to influence labor policy. Yet, their focus often aligns with Republican business interests, sidelining workers' cries for federal protections. This silence begs the question: is the Republican ideology within our unions harming American workers? Union Republicans claim to care about labor, yet they have failed to hold Trump accountable if Trump truly represents workers. Why hasn't he spoken up for the federal human rights protections workers have demanded for decades? Union Republicans must demand answers and accountability. They support business over labor. Republican-dominated unions often prioritize relationships with business leaders over advocating for workers' needs. The lack of federal standards benefits employers, who save money while workers suffer. They undermine solidarity. The divide between Union Republicans and traditional labor voices fractures the solidarity needed to demand meaningful change. By aligning with business-driven agendas, they weaken the broader labor movement. The failures of state-based workers' compensation: the current system is a patchwork of state laws that fail to provide fair and consistent protections for injured workers. Investigative reports like ProPublica's The Demolition of Workers' Compensation expose the injustice. Inconsistent benefits: injured workers in one state may receive vastly different compensation than those in another, even for the same injury. This inconsistency is unacceptable in a nation that prides itself on equality. Bureaucratic barriers: state systems are mired in red tape, making it difficult for workers to access benefits. The complexity and inconsistency deter workers from seeking the compensation they deserve. Political interference state lawmakers, influenced by corporate lobbyists, reduced benefits and protections to lower costs for businesses. This manipulation of the system places profits over people. A National Workers' Compensation Commission would provide uniform standards, streamline processes, and ensure that workers are protected regardless of state lines. Why the PRO Act is not enough. The Protecting the Right to Organize Act, while essential for strengthening collective bargaining rights, does not address the failures of the workers' compensation system. Supporting the PRO Act is critical, but it must be coupled with efforts to create a National Workers' Compensation Commission. These fights are not mutually exclusive, they are complementary. Union leaders and lawmakers cannot use the passage of the PRO Act as an excuse to ignore the systemic issues within workers' compensation. Injured workers need both the right to organize and the right to fair compensation. A call to action, accountability for all leaders. It is time to hold all leaders and union voices accountable, regardless of party lines or affiliations. The silence on workers' basic federal human rights must end. Union Republicans must ask themselves, are we standing with workers or with business interests? Why are we not demanding action from President Trump on federal workers' rights? Is our silence harming the very workers we claim to represent? Likewise, all unions and labor advocates must unite in demanding a National Workers' Compensation Commission to establish consistent protections and ensure justice for injured workers. Federal oversight of workers' rights to eliminate state-by-state disparities and corporate exploitation. Accountability from union leaders to ensure union priorities reflect the needs of workers, not political alliances or corporate partnerships. Conclusion: for over 5 decades, workers have cried out for justice. Their calls have been ignored by leaders across the political spectrum, including those who claim to champion their cause. The silence from Union Republicans and President Trump on federal workers' human rights is a betrayal of injured workers. The fight for federal workers' protections is not just a policy issue, it is a moral imperative. Let us come together, hold all leaders accountable, and demand justice for all workers. The laborer's grand bargain must not be sacrificed for corporate profits. As Benjamin Franklin once said, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. It is time for all of us, especially our Union Republican brothers and sisters, to join in the fight for true equality and justice for all workers. Let us also remember the words from Proverbs 31 verses 8 to 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless, and see that they get justice. Are we for the businessmen or for the workers? The answer to this question will define the future of the labor movement and the rights of workers across our nation.
Rolling down this lonesome highway, dreams in the dust they try to take away. Hands of steel, hearts of fire. We're the ones who built these empire spires. But the system's rigged, they stack the deck. Leave a man broken, keep them in check. But we ain't backing down, not today. This road to justice is ours to pay. On the highway of justice we roar along. Built this nation with blood and bone. From the rigs to the mills, hear our song. For the working man who stands alone. They got lawyers and bosses in polished boots, so I was sweating it out, paying the dues. They wanna cut our rights, leave us cold, but we're a freight train of fury, hard and bold. It's not left or right, it's red, white, and blue. For every worker out here just like you, from the factory floor to the driver's cab, near the backbone they'll never grab. On the highway of justice we roll along. Build this nation with blood and bone. stands alone. They can call us outlaws, but we stand tall. For every broken promise, for every wall. Together we rise, no man's left behind, but justice for all the working kind. So keep your foot on the pedal, your head on the wheel. We're breaking the chains, we're made of steel. On this highway of justice we found our call. For every worker we'll fight for all. On the highway of justice we roll along. This nation with blood and bone. From the rich to the mills, hear a song for the working man who stands alone.